by one of the great commentators and writers about basketball in today's day and age, and it's a busy, busy time. I have Ben Golliver back. Ben, it's great to have you back again. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to be here. Stretch run. It's amazing. These teams have less than 30 games until the playoffs. We have a huge field of possible contenders. I feel like we're shaping up, as long as guys can get healthy and stay healthy, we're shaping up for an insanely good playoffs this year with a lot of interesting matchups. And it finally feels like it's just right around the corner. I mean, March Madness is not that long away, and you know what that means. The NBA playoffs right after that.
Oh, I know. That is the magical time of year for hoop addicts, hoop lovers everywhere. March Madness into the NBA playoffs. I totally agree with you about the stretch run. It's like all of a sudden the light went on and holy cow, this is really getting serious now. Before we get started, though, I want to share with our listeners and viewers that recently you have taken a career, you've taken a different path in your career. Tell everybody about what you're doing now and where they can follow you. And I want everything, Ben. I want people to know everything about you.
Well, this is not a time for euphemisms. Let's just be straightforward and honest. The Washington Post kind of blew up their sports section. I think people probably saw the headlines about that. And so for the first time since 2007, I didn't have a place, to write. Of course, it takes a little time to kind of figure out what my next job will be. And of course, I really want to cover the NBA and continue doing that. But I was starting to go a little stir crazy, and it's not even cold down here like it is up there for you guys in Canada. So I started a Substack, bengolliver.substack.com. And, there's going to be some basketball writing on there, I'm sure, but it's also going to be about everything else in life that I haven't gotten to write about over the last 17, 18 years. I went to school for creative writing, not journalism, which sometimes surprises people. But I have, all sorts of interesting things that I get into, whether it's travel or some of my hobbies. And, really what I'm trying to do is be inviting and be fun with this writing. It's a tough time in the world. Obviously, I know that firsthand watching, this storied institution of the Post kind of just completely change direction and basically let readers down, and we're not going to be at these games that we used to be at. So, from that standpoint, I just kind of wanted to try to spin a negative into a positive as I kind of plot out my next steps. So hopefully some of your listeners will find that fun and hop on. And it's bengolliver.substack.com.
Okay, we've got that covered, but talk about your podcast as well that you do.
Yeah. Well, for the true diehard hoop heads, and I mean, guys like you, it's called Greatest of All Talk. And, we've been doing it for 6 years independently. And it's just the most incredible community. I mean, we have a very active Discord of all the listeners who chime in together. We get probably 100 emails plus every single week from people asking questions. So it's a very interactive community. And then we pretty much talk almost for 4 hours every week about the NBA, the latest updates, what we're seeing in terms of trends around the league, good trades, bad trades, obviously after the deadline, who's winning, who's losing. And, I'm still going to be going to games here. The Lakers Celtics is Sunday. I'll be there. So, we get some firsthand reporting, from pretty near courtside as well. So you add it all up. We're very proud of the basketball podcast. And if people are, deep into basketball, I think they might have heard of the Open Floor podcast with Sports Illustrated, which, I was the host of for a number of years. And after I stopped that project, I did start this independent project, and it's been the most fun work experience I've had of my entire life, the most rewarding as well. We've got listeners basically every continent, dozens of countries, a lot of people who are sort of NBA exiles, right? They might find themselves in Iceland with nobody to talk NBA with because nobody else cares in their community. Well, they listen to our show, they email in, and we get all these great, conversations going. And one of the cool things is, and you'll appreciate this, talent comes from everywhere in the world these days. And so sometimes we're getting scouting reports from, hey, there's this Finnish teenager you got to see, he's going to be the next big thing. And sure enough, 3 years later, he's entering the NBA draft and, he's a real player. And so that's been fun too. It's like this loosely organized group of basketball spies is how I like to think about it, where we just have people in every corner of the world. And so, if the next LeBron comes from your backyard, I'm pretty sure you're going to be telling me about it. And that's sort of how it goes with this group as well.
So, Ben, again, the name of the podcast, I'm assuming it's on all the podcast networks.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to subscribe. So just go to greatestofalltalk.com. And it's a subscription thing, but it's real easy to set up. And, you could be listening today. It's a matter of seconds.
Fantastic. Okay. Greatestofalltalk.com. Ben Golliver of Substack.com as well. Is that correct?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, let's talk a little basketball right now. You were at the All-Star game. It was in your backyard again, as we sit up here freezing in Edmonton. Ben's going to basketball games in the sunshine in Southern California. So best viewership since 2011.
Yeah.
And you know what? I have been very critical of the All-Star game format. It seems irrelevant. It had seemed irrelevant. NBA, though, they are relentless. A Rolling Stone gathers no moss, and they reinvented it. But they seem, for the time being anyway, certainly they hit a good formula this year, and they struck a chord with viewers. And I have to say, as the old curmudgeon that I am, it was enjoyable. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I'll tell you, it might not have been a three-ring circus celebration for them where they're just head over heels so happy about it, but if you go back to how Saturday night went, where the highlight was Jace Richardson in the dunk contest, basically crashing off of the backboard, hitting his head super hard on the court, and everybody just gasping like, oh my God, what has happened to him? But then also, what has happened to this contest? There was a lot of anxiety about, oh no, is this going to be a disaster of a weekend? And so to have the huge rating number on Sunday that you're talking about, to have the very competitive game, in terms of the international versus the USA format, to have the young guys step up and say, we're going to be leaders, Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards for their respective teams, really playing hard and setting the tone. I feel like it wasn't celebration for the NBA. It was relief. It was like, thank God that these guys decided to actually play hard this year, because otherwise I think people would have looked back and they would have just remembered a lot of empty seats in the arenas, fans getting priced out and kind of flat crowds. But Sunday, it kind of made up for everything else before that. And there were some challenges here for NBC too. I mean, having it go at the same time as the Olympics, you're going to send a lot of your people to the Olympics, right? And so you got to make sure that you have the right production going on for the All-Star game. And it was a weird time of day. They started it at 2 p.m. local time, which in LA is not when you want to start anything. This is, it's not, Las Vegas where things don't start till 2 a.m., but, it's usually a late arriving crowd. So that was a challenge for them trying to work around the Olympics. But the smart thing they did, Paul, was they just made it about basketball on Sunday, right? It wasn't like last year where we had that hour-long tribute in the middle of the game to Charles and Shaq. That was totally irrelevant. That killed the flow of the game. If you kind of set these guys up to play hard and somebody does set the tone, everyone else catches on super fast. It's so funny how the NBA is a copycat league, right? It just takes one guy and everybody's going to follow its step. And so NBC did a nice job. It wasn't a big halftime show. There's no big musical act at halftime. Pregame, they had the flags. There was some pomp and circumstance, but they didn't do the half an hour long player introductions. They just got to it, and it worked.
It worked really well. It looked really great. The competition was fun to watch. And you mentioned Wemby and Ant, and I thought they really were, I thought, the fuse that lit the fire for the weekend. Wemby genuinely cared. I love that aspect of his personality. I like the fact that he's a bit of a Renaissance player. He's himself. He's not made for TV. He's not a production guy. He's a guy that's out there competing and has his own personality that really emanates from the way he expresses his emotions, not just as a player, but away from the play. And then Ant is very charismatic.
Well, by express his emotions, I think you mean when he was so angry at Karl Anthony Towns on the final defensive possession that they lose, that he can't control his anger in the All-Star game because he's so competitive. That's probably what you mean, right?
I think that's exactly it. And I love that. Yeah. I love that because you got a guy who really cares and who really is into it.
Well, Kevin Durant had that motto for a long time, that it was hard work beats talent if talent fails to work hard. And when I'm looking at this modern NBA landscape, everybody's talking tanking these days, right? And when you really go back and look at the teams that have won championships recently, they typically have not been led by number one picks that they drafted, right? And I mean, you go back, I think the last guy who won a championship, who was the best player on a championship team, who had been a number one overall pick, is LeBron James. So you're talking about 20 years, where that's a pretty long stretch. But that's where the hard work part comes in, because you look at some of these guys who have actually led title teams. Think about how much they've improved since they got to the NBA. Not when they got drafted. It's the development time that they've put in while they've been pros. I'm looking at Joker. I'm looking at even a Jason Tatum. I'm looking at Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, even. The list goes on and on and on of these recent champions who have become much, much better players and who were not necessarily the most highly touted prospects when they came to the NBA, who have become a lot of the NBA's best players. And that's what's so exciting about Wemby, because Wemby came to the NBA as the most touted prospect in 20 years. So we know he has the talent. We know he has the body. And this is the rare number one pick in my eyes who also has the work ethic and the development, who is willing to say, I want to keep getting better every single day rather than just settling for, oh, I'm an NBA player. Life's pretty cool. I'm Ja Morant. I can go on Instagram Live. I'm Zion Williamson. I can, party all night and whatever it might be. And Anthony Edwards is in that camp too. He has improved a ton over the course of his NBA career. And so those are the truly special players, right? It's when you've got the talent that pops and the work ethic that pops. So we've been waiting a long time for somebody to really have both of those. And it felt like an all-star weekend. We got to see two of them going head to head. Even though they played different positions, very different personalities, it was such a great sight to see.
It really was. Alan Horton, the radio voice of the Timberwolves, was on my show last week. And Alan talked about Ant and his development. And what I really appreciated, because a lot of times, guys that are calling the games, they're pretty reluctant to get overly critical, and Alan would never do that. But what he did say was, he indicated there is that final step that Ant has to take, where he has to game in and game out know that he is the guy who has to lead this team forward. And he used the comparison to Michael Jordan, of that even when Jordan was playing badly, he was never conditional with his effort. He didn't hang his head and pout or blame. And Ant, once in a while, will still do that. Still a little bit of that in him, less and less. But it came through, as you very nicely pointed out, in the All-Star game. It's great to see Ant out there carrying. He really is gregarious. He really is good for the game, as is Wemby. And Wemby's serious-mindedness, like, I get the feeling from Wemby like I got from a Jordan of, I want to win titles. Yeah. And I'm going to work my butt off to make sure that happens, to be the best I can be, to be the best leader on this team. So to have that kind of spotlighted in an all-star environment where the league has really been pooping the bed for a long time is really, it really was great to see. So now, though, we transition, Ben, into what's next. So I'm going to ask you a couple of snapshot. I'm going to give you a couple of snapshots from last night. I'd love your commentary on. Detroit is really good. Detroit is really good. And they went in and they smacked New York. Pretty healthy New York for overall. Not completely, but pretty healthy. Detroit's going to be a monster to handle in the East. So my question to you is, I'm going to start with the Knicks, actually. For the Knicks, this is their do or die year. They believe they have put the team together that they feel is going to be able to compete for going to the NBA Finals. I don't see it with Detroit in the way. I think they're going to have a hard time with Cleveland. The Knicks' shortfalls came through last night, and Detroit's strengths came through. Let's start with the Knicks. Where are you with New York and this lineup, this blend of talent? And what about Karl Anthony Towns? Is he doing enough to give them the best shot?
It's interesting because, you look at Minnesota, they made the decision that Rudy Gobert was a better fit for a championship push with Anthony Edwards than Karl Anthony Towns. They just ultimately concluded Towns cannot play center defensively well enough. And even if you try to move him to 4, he can't hold up well enough in those playoff moments to be able to get you all the way. He is just a liability on that end. He's an amazing offensive player, one of the best big man shooters of all time. A really nice guy, fan-friendly. You could say the world about him. But, when push comes to shove, he is a huge target defensively, and he can get picked on and exploited, right? So when I look at the Knicks, they have a lot of talent. It's all aligned age-wise. I think that they gel together quite well. They have clearly defined roles. They have a MVP caliber, I wouldn't say MVP, but MVP conversation leader in a Jalen Brunson. But I don't think this can be a team that wins a championship this year, because I think that, Towns ultimately holds them back. And then Brunson, because of his size, is going to have a really heck of a time trying to get through the entire playoffs unscathed and hold up all the way to the finish line. I mean, even somebody like Shea was completely gassing out at times of the finals and was really, just trying to get there, by any means necessary. And we saw what happened with Halliburton, Tatum, Lillard, a whole bunch of players in last year's playoffs. And so those are the sources of my skepticism for New York. But I still think they're good. I still think that that's a team that could be in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a team that could potentially even reach the finals. I'm just not convinced that they can win it all. Now, your point about, well, Detroit's in their way, so let's slow down a little bit, and maybe they're not making the finals. Maybe they're going to run into some hurdles before they get there. I think it's very well taken. I love it when a team just plays great basketball for like 5-6 months and it's still not enough to convince people. Yep. I love that they're going to probably be the number one seed heading into the playoffs, and they're going to face more questions in the casual fan's mind than Cleveland, New York, even Boston, all these other teams. And it just it's so good for the coaching staff, because they could just play the easiest card in the world, which is nobody believes in you. Everybody still thinks you're the Pistons from 2 years ago, and you're not. You better go show them. And I think in this era of parity, we are seeing more teams bounce up and down the standings. I'm calling it elasticity, right? Where you could be the Pacers in the finals one year and you could be dead last in the East the very next year with one bad injury, right? You could be Phoenix looking, dead in the water, and, you make an interesting trade this summer. Dylan Brooks comes in, plays great. Now you're right back in the playoff mix. So we're seeing teams go up and down, up and down. And I think we have to adjust our knowledge and say, well, in a lot, for most of NBA history, you have to take steps in the playoffs to really get to the finish line, right? You have to win a series, and then you have to advance to the conference finals, and you have to pay your dues and get there. And I'm not so sure that's the case anymore, especially because there's so many injuries out there. If Detroit won the title, it would surprise me, but it would not shock me. If San Antonio won the title coming after a lottery year, it would surprise me, because that's not usually how it goes, but it would not shock me. We're in an era where we've seen a lot of different champions over these past years, been a lot of different ways to win the championship. And the key factor is, do you have talent? Do you have depth? And are you together? Well, Detroit checks all those boxes. The team they actually kind of remind me of is Derrick Rose's Bulls. Now, Cade's obviously a much bigger player than Derrick Rose, but the idea of like, hey, the offense is one guy. He's going to handle almost everything, and he's going to set people up and use his role players very well. But Cade's got the offense. He's the engine. Everybody else just plays defense and gets in fights. That's the job. and Detroit does that very well. Yeah. And exactly. And that's kind of how that Bulls team was. And, if Rose had stayed healthy, they could have won a championship. They definitely could have had a nice long run. And so that's been what's fun watching this Pistons team for me. Very clear identity. Cade's at an MVP level. I had him second on my ballot in the most recent ESPN survey, just out of respect to his all-around ability and Detroit's consistent winning and his health. I mean, I think he deserves to be in that spot, especially as Shea is out and Joker's been coming back from injury. He could win the whole thing. I mean, he could win MVP, and nobody really saw that coming before the season. So what a phenomenal story for the NBA.
I'm talking to Ben Golliver here on the Deep Dive with Paul on Hoop City with Paul Sir. I'm going to go in the MVP vein right now, because Denver's 2-4 since the Joker came back. The Joker's playing well, but he's not playing like he played before he was injured. Now, I would attribute that to his still recovering, still finding his legs, still finding his way back. So here's my question. He has snuck in under the 65 game limit. So if he doesn't miss another game, the Joker doesn't miss another game, he'll be eligible. But let's say he, SGA, Giannis, Luka don't meet the 65 game standard. Is Cade Cunningham the clear MVP?
Well, Wemby's pretty close to missing out on it as well. So, to me, I think, the guys who have the games played for sure, who are in a good spot to get there, are Cade and Ant. And so if Cade, we do see...
I would throw Wemby, sorry to interrupt, but I would throw Wemby in as well, because I totally agree with you, but I also would put Brown in there from Boston.
Okay. Yeah, Brown's a good one. I mean, I guess I was saying with Wemby is like he's pretty close to missing out on 65 as well
That's true.
because he had some injuries early. So if we're looking at the healthy contingent, the guys who we think are going to be there, I think that's probably your top three, Cade, Ant, and Brown. I mean, those guys are all getting rewarded for winning, getting rewarded for great individual numbers, and then clear impact on the court as well, right? Like when they're out there, everything kind of revolves around them. With Joker, it's a really unintended consequence of the 65 game rule. We saw it a couple of years ago where Halliburton was kind of playing on one leg for a while just so that he could stay eligible for all NBA. With Joker, I think had this rule not existed, he never comes back until after the All-Star break, right? They just say, hey, it's not worth it. Take the extra 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to ramp up your conditioning. We're going to make sure you're 100%. And then you're going to have a blitz late season to try to make sure that we can kind of get back the high seeding. Now, Denver was in a very fortunate situation, actually, unexpectedly, where they were able to win more games than most people thought without Joker.
Absolutely.
And so the argument was like, well, now he can come back and he can work his way into shape and he can stay eligible for MVP. And we just try to kind of cover every base. But I don't know if that was actually what was best for Denver. I think the extra time off for Joker would have been better because he's never had it. He's never had such a long break during the middle of the season. And of course, he has to rush back because of the way the NBA rules work. And, maybe you could make the case he should have just punted on the MVP and he should have just taken the extra time and stayed slower. Ultimately, that was, his decision and the organization's decision. But you can point to that rule and said that played a real factor here. And that's why I give Joker a pass for how he's been playing and how the team has been kind of mediocre since he came back. I think it was just an unfortunate deal. If he continues to not be himself or he's lagging or whatever else, I would encourage Denver. He's already got 3 of them. 4 would be cool, but he's already got 3 of them. And what really matters is that second finals MVP. So keep that as your main goal.
I think that would be great advice for them to follow. And by the way, I last night watching them lose, Jamal Murray not knocking down the free throw and being outperformed by fellow Canadian Mathurin, who had probably a career night for him. But I always joke about the Clippers right now. There's a great Seinfeld episode where they're very Elaine wants to get a poster signed by the 3 tenors. And she called them the other guys. There's Pavarotti and the other guys. So you're one of the other guys. That's how I think of the Clippers. There's Kawhi and the other guys. I would love to have. I'd love to have a poll of name 4 guys on the Clippers roster right now, and you'd be hard pressed. But they have surprised people. I'm not saying they're where they're going to go. I'm just saying I've been impressed with the Clippers and the effort they put forward. And I've been impressed with Kawhi and the effort he's put forward and the way he's been able to perform. They've been in every game and winning more than you would think they would in the few games since the big trades have taken place. Fair summary?
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, I think your point on the other guys and who's on the team, it's all because they made so many moves, right?
That's right.
And they were a team that started horribly. They easily could have pulled the plug on the season and had everybody quit. And it actually went the other way. They pulled themselves together brilliantly, but they came to the trade deadline and they actually decided they didn't believe in it. James Harden's kind of like, I don't want to be here. I'm ready for my next stop. And then they decided to cash out on Zubac, who's one of their best young players. And pretty soon the entire roster is turned over. And Kawhi Leonard in interviews is saying, this era is kind of done. We're not going to be competing for championships. I think it's the best stretch of basketball Kawhi's had since he joined the Clippers. And I think he was another star of All-Star Weekend, by the way. He had 31 points in the third quarter. I mean, that's just insane. I can't ever. And it was real basketball. It wasn't track meet basketball. It was, he just could not miss. And so what an exciting time for a team that kind of really needed it, after what a challenging season it's been. I like how they pivoted, though. This was the oldest team in the NBA. They were trying to hang on with Harden and Chris Paul. Where's that going to take you? Now you're retooling. You got Mathurin, who you mentioned. Darius Garland, who's, injured and banged up, but he's going to be coming back. He's significantly younger. And, potentially you can pivot off of Kawhi in the future as well, where, it kind of seems like that's run its course. Maybe says another year, who knows? But it's no longer, it has to be everything is all about Kawhi because you've laid some groundwork for the future. So, if you're a fan, your head is spinning. You came into the season thinking you were going to be great. Then you were horrible. Then you were great. Then your team blew up. Now you're younger, and now you're wondering still what's going to happen with Kawhi and the whole investigation into the salary cap circumvention. I mean, there's so much going on if you're a fan. But I do think the Clippers have positioned themselves better today than they were to start the season. No question about it, even if they're probably not going to be a real threat in the playoffs.
No, but a number of tactical moves that make sense, that position them for success in the future. We know from the Thunder, which you and I talk about, everybody talks about how they build for the future, how you rebuild a platform. That certainly seems to be the direction that the Clippers are going in. I'm going to go into the skullduggery and the espionage of the NBA right now with you. We'll get to tanking in a second, Ben, but I'm going to ask you the question. You've got this Kawhi investigation going on. You've got the gambling worry, the gambling investigation going on. Crickets, absolute crickets. Now, on one hand, you say, well, what's there to talk about? They're investigating. They're assembling. That's accurate. But in today's era, it seems the NBA is fabulous at keeping this under wraps. They really are. But to have these major issues ongoing throughout the entire regular season, it's really quite amazing that the NBA has been as effective as they are at keeping that closet door shut.
I would agree. I would also say that in some cases, they're just hanging out and waiting for the news just like we are, because they don't really have control of the gambling investigations. I mean, that's the feds. And I think the NBA to some degree was caught off guard, or at least on the back foot, when it came to the timing of the arrest right at the beginning of the season and the scope and nature of all the different people who got kind of caught up with it. Obviously, there's the poker deal. Certainly, they probably heard something about what was happening, but I don't think that was part of the master plan. And, the legal system has to play out in its own timeline. And so the NBA is, unfortunately, you don't feel bad for Adam Silver, because obviously he's an incredibly wealthy guy running a very successful league, but he is kind of at the mercy of those investigations.
Fair
now,
comments.
Your point on the Clippers, though, in terms of it has been very quiet, and that's led to a lot of speculation one way, speculation the other. No one really knows. The NBA, their approach here is to bring in a third-party law firm, and they've used them before investigating the Phoenix Suns, in some of these other investigations. And what that does is it gives them plausible deniability. It says, hey, we actually don't know what's going on with the investigation because we have a third party doing it. And having the third party do it actually, in theory, gives them more credibility, because the idea is that it's a little bit more impartial. It's going to be very thorough. You're putting the best lawyers in the country on it, and you're hoping, they're going to be able to get to the bottom of the facts. And so, again, that's a situation where the NBA is saying, well, this is a really complicated situation with the Clippers. I mean, there's a company that's in bankruptcy. It's crazy fraud. These lawyers are racking up the overtime hours. I promise you that. And the NBA is waiting for them to write the report. So,
oh my God,
I don't know when it's all.
I'd love to see the legal bills. It would be the number of zeros would be incredible.
Right. Well, for a while they called the NBA was nothing but attorneys. That was back in the David Stern era. Then in the Adam Silver era, we started calling it nothing but accountants, right? Because they were so focused on the money. And now we're probably back to nothing but attorneys, right? With these different scandals. But I do think that at some degree, I mean, they can control when the information is released. And what I would just encourage the NBA to do is to do the same thing they did with the Suns investigation of Robert Sarver, and that is put the whole report out. The reports in the Sarver, the details, I should say, in the Sarver report were incredibly damning. I mean, there were so many bad situations that he was involved in, and it ultimately led to his ouster. He had to be replaced as the owner. And I think that whatever details that they're able to collect in this investigation, let's not make this redacted. Let's not make this like the Epstein files. Okay, let's put this out. And, if we have to wait for it, let's make sure we get the whole story, right?
100%. Ben Golliver is joining me here on the Deep Dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. State of the Thunder. Where are they at?
Limping.
This is really interesting because, going from 24-1, kind of the fait accompli, these guys are going to repeat, there's no doubt about it, unbelievable organization. all that remains true, by the way. Unbelievable organization, unbelievable craftsmanship. But the gods of basketball are cruel. And they have been very, very cruel to OKC unexpectedly, in particular because of their age. They're such a young team to have this kind of injury disruption. But they genuinely seem rattled to me. Now, certainly, you've got arguably the the MVP out. But there's still enough talent and enough experience, Ben, that I would have expected less of a rattled feel than they seem to be portraying, at least to my eye, on what they're putting on the floor in terms of not just effort. The effort's been good. It's just the efficiency, the competency has been really, really unthunder-like. How's that for a terrible word?
Well, it sounds to me like they're a victim of your expectations, because you watched them last year and you saw one of the best teams we've seen, in recent memory, and maybe the best 100%. Defense we've seen in the modern era. And if it doesn't look like that, you're saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? It's all the same faces. So why aren't we getting the same results?
Yes.
I look at it as they have had so many injuries and so many cycles of injuries that I'm actually kind of impressed they've been able to stay where they are. And I do think it's a credit to their culture, because I think if the average team was missing guys in and out of the lineup and constantly shuffling and trying to change roles and trying to cover up for a really key guy like a Jalen Williams or an Isaiah Hartenstein, who are missing lots of time, let alone Shea, I think those teams, in many cases would be down closer to 500. And so, Oklahoma City, because of the work ethic and the youth that you're talking about, that's really what's kept their heads above water. And because the expectation was so high for them, they do feel like a disappointment. And yet they're still a really, really good basketball team. But what we did know about the Thunder from last year's playoffs, they weren't perfect, right? On offense, very reliant upon Shea. And if Jalen Williams wasn't hitting tough shots regularly, they struggled to find secondary scoring, right? And so Chet could do some stuff in isolation. Hartenstein, every once in a while, he can work as like the pop guy or the roll guy and throwing a couple of floaters. But their supporting cast guys are hit or miss shooters. And sometimes it's miss or miss with those guys, right? And so just because they work hard, just because they have a great culture, if you're jacking threes and you're not making them, you're not going to win every basketball game, right? And so that's the key for them, is really getting Shea and Jalen Williams back aligned, playing high-level basketball. That's when their offense can be elite. Without both those guys, their offense is closer to average. And I do think that, these injury issues you're talking about in terms of their age, we need to adjust on that too. What we're seeing is guys in the NBA are hitting their primes early. In many cases, they're hitting their declines earlier. The old cycle used to be like your prime was 27, you start declining maybe when you're 31. I think guys are coming to the NBA now, just with the way the offensive game is oriented. It's not quite as physical. I think people sometimes are hitting their peak 23, 24 now, and then you get to 28, and in some cases, guys are already showing decline. And some of that is injury related, where you get guys in their mid-20s, they start to suffer repeated injuries. There's wear and tear, and they're no longer capable of kind of blossoming into that full player that we hoped they would be. And so I think OKC's injury issues are actually sort of becoming the rule, or heading towards being the rule. And I hate to say it, it's the worst part about this season is how many players have been injured, period, but then how many important players have been injured. It's not load management. These are guys who can't withstand the load. Their bodies can't handle playing this fast and this hard for 6 months straight, and it's really concerning.
Ben, I'm going to add another element into it, and it's a personal passion of mine. And what I would add to it is that athletes across multiple sports, but I'll focus specifically on basketball, start playing vast numbers of games over extended periods of months at far too young, when they're far too young. And you see athlete burn, like I'm equating it somewhat to tennis, younger players burning out earlier.
Oh, totally.
Mentally and physically breaking down earlier. I think that's definitely happening in basketball. And it's something that is going to be very interesting over the next 5 years as the NIL transfer portal realities in NCAA basketball. But where I'm looking at it is the umbrella or the trickle down effect then to leagues. I mean, you've got junior high kids getting NIL money now.
Yes.
Like the capital, capitalism's tentacles we've gone from a little octopus to a giant squid, and its influence. I mean, when kids used to be young and their stars were a certain way, it was usually wearing a wristband or their shoes. But now it's track gears, the headsets, and now you're talking about NIL money and AAU guys running 13 and 14-year-old teams getting deals with Nike and everything like that. The commercialization and capitalism effect using kids as their pawns, because 99% of these kids aren't good enough to reach the upper echelon anyway. They're cash cows. And I'm very passionate about this because I witness this firsthand all the time. And these guys that say they're doing it for the kids, and they ain't. But taking it back up to the macro level, I think that's a big part of this, Ben, is that mental, the mental strain and pressure from such a young age to perform at such a high level, and what they physically go through with the increased pace of play and the physical skill that now is part of the NBA.
Well, I can tell you, I've talked to people at the highest level of the league office about this subject, and they agree with you 100%. They share your concerns. They see, there are benefits to the NIL era in terms of being able to compensate young athletes for their star powers. It sounds like you probably won't be buying a T-shirt of a high schooler's, personal brand maybe anytime soon, but you could if you want to these days. And I think there's 100%. There's some real benefits to that. I just saw Nike put out a new logo for Jazzy Davidson, the USC freshman. She was a high schooler in Oregon, not too far from where I grew up.
Right.
An incredible player. It's an incredible logo. The J of the logo looks like a saxophone.
It is good looking.
And you just think, well, yeah, she can't even drink yet. She's not even close.
No.
She's got a long way to go. She's not even a quote unquote adult here. And so that is different than it was 10 years ago. There's really no way around that. The push for money, it definitely impacts kids' bodies, because what you're doing is, hey, if you need to fight for NIL dollars as a middle schooler, you're willing to do whatever it takes, or you're going to make different decisions than if those dollars weren't available to you in previous generations. Same thing compounds into high school. You're going to play more games. You're going to travel more. You're going to take on bigger level tournaments across the country. You're doing whatever you can to get exposure. When you go to college, same deal now. It's like you're fighting for the dollars with the other best prospects. You're maybe transferring multiple times. You're doing all sorts of things, again, in the pursuit of money that was not available before. And there's pros to that, of course, because you're getting compensated, but there's also cons. And what winds up happening is that players come to the NBA, in my opinion, more ready to play, given the style of play. Like, they are polished, they've been trained, like they are kind of pros. They're going to hit the ground running. Look at Cooper Flagg. I mean, he's putting up unbelievable numbers. He's supposed to be a college freshman. He skipped a grade. He raced to the NBA, right? Konkadipple. I mean, the list goes on of these guys who are making instant impact at a very young age, and borderline all-star level talents already. My concern is, okay, well, they've been in the rat race now since they were 11 or 12 years old. Are they still going to be all-star level talents when they're 30? And I sure hope so. And I don't want to be too dire. Some of these guys are going to figure out and they're going to make it, and they're going to have really long careers like LeBron and KD and Steph Curry. But what we're seeing is a lot of very high-level prospect. I mean, Ben Simmons with his injury issues and mental issues, Zion, Ja Morant, LaMelo Ball, Trae Young. I mean, the list goes on and on of these guys who are supposed to be. You could even throw Luka in this mix, right? Where you watch him play on any given night. Does he look like he's in his mid-20s or his early 30s? Some people might say mid-30s. The way he manages his body, and he doesn't go downhill as much, and he settles for jumpers, doesn't move his feet on defense. And so it's just this advanced, development, I think, happening at an earlier age that's kind of coming back in some cases where the NBA has to foot the bill for it when these guys get into their late 20s. So it's a huge cause of concern for me, but once you let the cat out of the bag.
Wonderful Saturday here on Hoop City with Paul Sir and Josh Fenwick. Josh, Ben Golliver, it's hard to put into words how much information, knowledge, and experience come with his comments. He is so good, spot on, and well-informed, and his ability to articulate and bring it to life, I just think is really spectacular.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to reading his Substack. I didn't know he had started one, so
Well,
I'm a big. I'm looking forward to reading.
Well, please do, because Golliver's a great writer, and the fact that he's going beyond just basketball and going into his life experiences. His first article is on his trip to Denmark to go to the Lego factory, to go to the home of Lego. He's a Lego nerd, and it's a great read, so I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, let's get a poll update.
Yeah, so poll update. Who do you think will come out of the Eastern Conference and go to the NBA Finals? Your choices were the Toronto Raptors, Boston Celtics, Detroit Pistons, and Cleveland Cavaliers. No votes for either the Raptors or the Cavs. A couple of votes for the Celtics, but a majority of the votes going to the Detroit Pistons.
Wisely so, and again, a tribute to our very brilliant audience and their reading of the landscape. The tea leaves say it's going to be all Detroit if they stay reasonably healthy. They've proven as long as Cade Cunningham is healthy, they're able to build enough around him to continue to be successful, even when a great player like Duran, an all-star, is out for an extended period of time. So, great choice. Toronto Raptors, the reason I threw them in is because I think the Raptors have done such a great job this season. Watched them the other night in their win over Chicago, a team they should beat, but they look good. And Colin Murray-Boyles is doing a great job filling in as a 6'6" center, kind of going the Draymond Green route of being able to guard bigger players and throw them off balance because he's very, very strong, very, very quick and athletic. So he can match them strength-wise in the low block, and he can make them uncomfortable with his quickness and his positioning. So let's get to the text of the week. Who have you selected, Josh, this week?
Yeah. So regular texter in here, Tiger.
Hey, Tiger.
So unfortunately, not a lot of basketball text today. However, he texted and said, "Are they going to man up and do a pregame show for the gold medal final tomorrow at like 10:45?" And he was saying, "Josh, go do the pregame show." Now, this game, the puck drops at 6 a.m., which means a pregame show. I'd be in here at 4:30 probably, getting ready. But Tiger, just funny.
Well, way to go, Tiger. I can see Josh. Josh is like really a young guy. And I haven't known Josh that long, and he has now made a career change, so he's not working at a bar until 3 or 4 in the morning anymore. So he could have just come straight over, done your show for you, Tiger, but I don't think that's happening. So we'll get Tiger's information.
Absolutely.
And we'll get a shirt out to you. A couple of things I mentioned in the remarks early in the show that we're doing songs from 1970. That was my high school. Those were my high school years, and that was my sophomore year, grade 10 year in high school was 1970. He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother by the Hollies, which was number 46 this year that you just heard. That is a very specific memory for me. I remember the trip from Cresco to Gilbertville to play Don Bosco High School. Now, Don Bosco was a very good team. They were ranked that year. Our team, I was in grade 10 playing on the senior team. We had turned it around. We were 1-17 the year before. Now we were very competitive. I think our record for the year was 14-5. But we went down to Gilbertville, and we played against them, and they had an all-state player, 6'3" forward, whose name escapes me. But he was tearing us up early in the game. We were down 48-36 in the fourth quarter. And remember, in the States at this time, no shot clock and 8-minute quarters. So we're down 12. My great coach, Darryl Collins, puts in 3 of my sophomore grade 10 teammates, Tom, Jeff, and Kevin, put us into the game with our springy center, Gene Kapler. And we come back, and Tom Bateman hits a buzzer beater for us to win 49-48. And I remember specifically, because this is like I was kidding about my defense, but actually when I put my mind to it, I could play some defense. I held their all-state player scoreless after he scored the first 9 points of the game. He didn't score again. And I had 23 of our 49 points that game, but it was a special memory. And the reason I related it to that song by the Hollies is I remember hearing it on Coach Collins' AM radio because we couldn't take a bus because of a snowstorm, so we took cars that day. Very different time. It was like our games were all like going from here to Red Deer in order to play. We had no close games to us at all, but they are the best memories of my life. And speaking of memories, I want to give a shout out right now to my mom. My mom is 92 years old. My mom has had, we lost our dad 15 years ago. Mom still lives on our family farm near Cresco. No one, and Mom battles all of the health issues that seniors battle, from eyesight to hearing to other complications. You will not find a more dedicated basketball fan anywhere. When Caitlin Clark was playing for the Hawkeyes, never missed a game. Her great-grandson, Drake, who is a fantastic grade 10 sophomore shooter for Cresco High School, his games are streamed on YouTube. Mom is by the television for every game. When I played high school basketball, and I'm the oldest of 8 kids, Mom and Dad never missed a game. When I went to Winona State University, which again was like here to Red Deer, Mom, Dad, and my 7 brothers and sisters often would come to almost every home game. We would see this young group of looked like ducklings walking into the gym behind Mom and Dad. Great supporters. I am one of those people that can say nothing but that I am blessed with tremendous parents, tremendous brothers and sisters. Certainly my wonderful wife of 44 years, Sandra, my beautiful sons, grandsons, granddaughters, all the blessings in life. I'm so grateful every day for them, which ties into the weekly theme that I always talk about on the show, and that's the loss of our son, Ben. And the encouragement that I offer to all of you to make sure the people in your life that you care for, make sure you tell them you love them more often than not. And always be kind to your fellow human being, because we never know without walking a mile in their shoes what they might be going through in their lives. Now, our podcast plays every week. You can get it on your favorite podcast provider, and you can get it also on YouTube. I will be publishing my my playlist from today from the hits of 1970, and I also encourage you to listen to read my 3 from Deep blog that I write every week as well. I try to be insightful and build on what's going on in the world of basketball and related topics at all times. But in the meanwhile, I want to wish you, your loved ones, your family, have a great weekend. The deep freeze is almost over, Edmontonians. We're almost through the worst of it. And I really look forward to being back with you again next week. Josh, thanks so much for this week. It was so much fun.
Hey, it was my pleasure, Paul, as always. So I'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Remember today, 1 o'clock, you have Houston versus Arizona. 4:30 today, you have Michigan and Duke. Duke is visiting Michigan. Michigan's number 1 for a reason. I think their average margin of victory is 23 points this year. They will be, unless something changes dramatically or there's some sort of serious injury, they're going to be the heavy favorites, I think, in a very talented field to be the national champions this year. So have a great week on and off the court. I'm Paul Sir, and you've been listening to Hoop City on your sports leader, Sports 1440.